What's up, folks? It is Monday night. Yes, Monday night. And for those who are listening over on Sports Radio 102.9 FM, The Game, over on AMP Radio, of course, right here on BroadSTSouth.com. We do appreciate everyone tuning in tonight. As tonight, we launch a brand new show for you. This is going to be a lot of fun. Lloyd Vance in the house. You guys can forget about Ryan Neff. You know, he's always around, so don't worry about him. But nonetheless, Lloyd Vance is here. And the debut of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on Sports Radio 102.9, The Game, the show. Every week we'll be here at 7 o'clock, so you guys don't miss it. Of course, it will be 4 o'clock on the West Coast and or the left coast, as a lot of us say here on the East Coast. But nonetheless, we'll wrap up week one, what it is and or maybe what it was. I think for a lot of teams, it was a sleeper. Kind of shocking the way it ended up happening. But nonetheless, it ended up being a good one. And then tonight will be the final debut of Aaron Rodgers for your New York Jets and or your New York Football Jets, along with the Buffalo Bills with Josh Allen. Do I think that the Jets will pull it off? I'll let you know later on as we leave probably that one towards the latter part of the show. But nonetheless, we're going to have a ton of fun as we usually do here on the network. So next week, you might see a different graphic change as we'll get things kind of set up here. But I also like to thank those who showed up yesterday. Listen, quit waving you. As he's waving the back in the green room there. But nonetheless, make sure that you guys tune in here every single week. And don't forget also in our reminder, as a thank you to everyone who showed up yesterday at Tampa Joe's for the Eagles game. And thank you as well for our guests that showed up for episode 200, Monica from 102.5 The Bone, with the Roger and JP show from 11 to 2. And also for Ronnie Gent taking time away after his daughter's meet to come over there and make sure he was with us. So with that all being said, episode 201 here as we make now the next climb towards 300. And with all that being said, I'm Angie Martinez, and we will see you right on the other side. And here we are with the man of the hour, the NFL historian, writer, researcher, contributor to ESPN, to the NFL Network. Let's see, can't forget president, CEO. I'll just keep naming all kinds of different things for Lloyd. But Lloyd, first of all, thank you for joining the network, and thank you for your show here on Broad Street South.
Oh, Adrian, so glad. Angel, so glad to be with you, and it's exciting opportunity, and it's going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to look around the league, and hopefully I'll start getting some of my insider guests around, guys that I've worked with over years in terms of covering the game. I've been an NFL reporter, writer since the early 2000s, and I've gotten to work on some very good projects, as you were talking about, for NFL Films, as well as ESPN. So it was exciting to bring this to your listening audience, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun talking about the game. And it was a fun week yesterday. It was interesting. Week one, everybody says don't put too much into everything that happens week one, but I went back and researched it, and week one is kind of important in terms of teams and the long term, what's going to happen with them throughout the season. So, last year, for instance, out of the 14 teams that started that made the playoffs, 10 of them won in week one. So, it just shows you that, okay, you can get off to a good start, and it can help spur you as you move along in the season. So interesting. The weather had a lot of factor in some of these games. And then you look at some of the underdogs that stepped up. So, we'll start first with them locally, like I always like to do. I know we have a lot of listeners from the Philadelphia area, and then we'll jump in and talk about Tampa Bay next. So, Ryan, what were your impressions of the first week around the National Football League?
Cincinnati, oy vey. Minnesota, same old thing with Cousins. New York Giants, same old New York Giants. Joe Burrow gets the big contract. Daniel Jones gets the big contract, and they didn't show up yesterday. So Little surprises. I expected Denver to win yesterday. They didn't. Maybe there are some teams that aren't as good as they seem to be, and maybe teams that are of the lesser value might be better than they seem to be. So again, I don't really put much stock into the first week. I sort of let things play out for the first half of the season, and then you sort of know what you have, and then I'll take it from there. So, we'll see what happens in week 2. There's some interesting matchups in week 2.
Yeah, and I do kind of tend to lean towards what you were saying in terms of week 1. Last year you had the Bears beating the San Francisco 49ers 19-10 last year in week 1, and everybody was like, "Oh, what's going on here?" So it kind of just shows you how things can kind of turn quickly around the NFL. And the key thing though is you probably don't want to start 0-2. So as these teams move into week 2, last year there were 4 teams that started 0-2, and Cincinnati was the only one to make the playoffs. And in 2019, 2020, and 2021, no team that started 0-2 made the playoffs. So, you probably don't want that, and that could be a death sentence, and 0-3 is even worse. But, it's always good for teams to get off to a good start. And I'll start locally where I am in the Philadelphia area. And I was listening to a lot of fans today, and they were talking about the Eagles, and it was almost like they had lost. They lost a game.
No.
Maybe they were being too negatives. They always talk about Negadelphia, but the Eagles won 25-20 in a road game in the rain. Tom Brady's being honored, and yes, I will mark it up as an ugly win, but it's a win. And as you start going through the season, there's no style points, and they're not going to say, "Oh, they only barely beat them." They're just going to worry about whether they beat them or not. And it's a road win. Obviously, the Eagles went in there as a slight favorite in the game, and they took care of business. Did not come out of there totally healthy, which was, Fletcher Cox has a rib injury. They lose to Kobe Dean, their starting linebacker, who they were counting on. He has a foot injury, and Bradbury got banged up with a concussion. So they didn't come out of it totally healthy, and that was a key last year in their Super Bowl run. So interesting win, but they definitely, in terms of style points, need to get better. And everybody's talking about Angel. They're talking about Brian Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. Is he ready for prime time? What do you think?
We got two comments here. One is Rick Marcus. He says that we won, but we were outplayed, and that's why people get nervous for the next game. And the other thing that I should have started out with, which I completely forgot, which I don't forget, but obviously for the start of the show, Joey B reminds us, good evening, fellas. 9/11, never forget, as it is the anniversary of 9/11. For those who have lost their lives in New York, Pennsylvania, and Shrinksville, and out in D.C. as well. We'll never forget that day back in 2001. Unbelievable thing. It's already been 22 years since it had happened, and still no justice whatsoever, because the lead terrorist is still behind bars, but nothing else has come out of it. Some reports have come out, but that'll be for a whole different show and a whole different day, because that's more on the political side of the house. And then Rick had mentioned something earlier as well, when he had mentioned about the Cowboys and the Giants, as far as saying that are the Cowboys that good, and or are the Giants that bad? And we'll save that for a little bit later on. But to get back to as far as Eagles week 1, Lloyd, and you're going to hear a lot of Eagles fans. Obviously, it was disappointing. Ryan heard it yesterday down there at Tampa Joe's, how they were getting upset as the game progressed. The first 18 minutes, and we had mentioned it just before we went on air here, seemed like to be the fastest start for the Eagles, between the touchdown, obviously the run back for the touchdown by Darius Slay. And I'm not going to, by any means, I think Jalen Hurts could have had a much better game. Obviously, it was a slow start for him, but the O-line also wasn't there either. And I'm not saying that as a homer, but it just didn't seem like the O-line, as we saw things turn in the second and third and the fourth. Finally, the O-line started coming back. But we've seen that last year, Lloyd. We saw the same thing. We've seen it where either the Eagles have come out impactful in the first half and or flat, and then vice versa. They're either, they're running on a high horse in the second half and doing a lot better. I think the big takeaways yesterday, obviously, we were hoping to see the running game to be a lot bigger for the Eagles. But again, the Patriots defense, good at times. Do I say they have the best defense in the NFL? None but at least. But they were able to hold toe to toe with the Eagles. I think playing spoilers to Tom Brady's return. I don't know how that was designed. Obviously, I think it's because of him losing with the Eagles, with the Patriots, I should say, versus the Eagles. Maybe that's why they brought him back to try and pump him up to be able to cheat and win again. That's just my own little opinion. But to me, I think Jalen Hurts, he'll have a breakout game here week 2. It's a condensed week, obviously having a day off today from the travel, and then you play on Thursday night, the home opener against Minnesota. So I think defense, definitely with the injuries, it makes it a little bit tougher. Defensively, I think altogether it wasn't bad. If I had to give him a grade, I guess I would give him a C for yesterday's game. The O-line, I would probably keep it at the same, at about a C. But I think Jalen Hurts will have a much better game here for week 2, Thursday night, again, a condensed one, and then they're down in Tampa Bay. But, it could have been, it definitely could have been a lot worse. We've seen them go flat. We saw the wide receivers at times. It didn't seem like they were keyed up at the same time. So, it was just a mixture of stuff. I think a lot of it probably had to do with nerves as well. This is the first time that you have Jalen Hurts starting as a starting quarterback ever in his lifetime, 3 seasons in a row. So, a lot of factors come into play with week 1, but he still looked good. Sometimes he just drives me nuts when Philly fans, they get upset over the minor details. It's just week 1. You're still 1-0. It's not a big deal.
Hey, Angel, just real quick. I'm still showing backstage. I don't show up on the screen anywhere.
Yeah, you're on the screen.
Oh, okay.
Yep, you're here.
So it's probably just my phone, my ugly self. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with the Angel that it's a situation where, they won a game. He's 22 or 33 for 170 yards, no interceptions. He did have a touchdown pass that he threw. I was a little disappointed in that DeAndre Swift, their big pickup from the Detroit Lions, only got 2 touches in the game. Yeah. And they have to do a better job in terms of getting him the ball. Now, the interesting thing is they made that move to bring in DeAndre Swift, the hometown kid from St. Joe's Prep. And Kenneth Gainwell got the majority of the early snaps. He had 14 carries for 54 yards. So he seemed to be their guy start their season. And you want to see Swift more involved. And that offensive line, which you're talking about, was one of the best in the league. They did allow 3 sacks. But I thought for overall, they got that 16-point lead, as you talked about, with Darius Slay. And then Brian Johnson, who's the new offensive coordinator, kind of laid back. They just kind of sat back on that league, and then it was 16-14 at the half, and then they at the end they shut them down. So Mac Jones did throw for 316 yards, but he had to throw 54 times, and he had that pick 6 that we talked about earlier. So
right.
The Eagles did a nice job with that, and I know fans were happy when they saw Ezekiel Elliott get hit and by Jordan Davis, and he had that fumble, because we know how much Eagle fans love the Cowboys.
Right.
Well, here,
Lloyd,
my concern
before you go on, Lloyd, I want to get your take too, and then there's 2 more comments, and I'll take the comments after Ryan's response. But Lloyd, the one with Jalen Hurts, the run obviously for the fumble, to me, it's trying to do too much with too little. But I think the big thing was that obviously, I know Jalen, mobile quarterback, there's nothing wrong with it. Do not put yourself in that situation, especially come week 1, because that could have been a very nasty hit. We could have lost Jalen Hurts for the season. But I think I understand he was trying to scramble. Don't get me wrong, and he's trying to make something out of nothing. But though that was one where the hit, you got to secure the ball, and that was all on Jalen, because that ball was not completely secured. He was just looking downfield and not looking at obviously the defender that was coming towards him.
Yeah, and on that play, I thought he might slide a little earlier, and he kind of got airborne, and then he got hit, and then bang, the ball comes out. And we talked about this, you and I, and our buddy Rich that I'm on with up here. Too often he taking contact on. He got hit probably more than most quarterbacks last year. And much like Josh Allen, you don't want your quarterback taking that much punishment. Yes, he ran the ball about 9 times, and he was the Eagles' leading rusher, but you want to make sure that he's running in key spots and then getting down on the ground, like you see Pat Mahomes and a lot of these other quarterbacks do. They use that baseball slide to not get hit. Go ahead,
Ryan?
Ryan.
Uh, I'd be concerned if I were Eagles fans, to be quite honest with you. I mean, Nick Sirianni got away from the run game. He was trying to do different things with Hurts, obviously. If he's going to do the RPO like that and he's not going to slide, he's going to get hurt at some point. I mean, he already coughed up the ball yesterday. And, obviously Gainwell was the main focus in the running game. They didn't use Swift, which is concerning. I don't know, why Sirianni didn't use him more. But at some point, you've got to take a little bit of pressure off of Hurts. I know he's an athlete. I know he's proficient at the RPO. But if he does too much of that, he will get hurt like he did last year. Still have A.J. Brown. You still have Devontae Smith. Now, Goddard was frustrated yesterday. But, when the Eagles had the most success last year is when they pounded the rock with that offensive line. And they didn't do enough of it. They got that 16-0 lead. I thought they got a little bit lackadaisical, a little bit too comfortable. And, they almost lost a football game. And going forward, Philadelphia got lucky in some of those games last year that they won. So defensively, I think they're going to be fine. I know Mac Jones had a good game yesterday throwing the football around. He really spread the ball around. I think they will be okay. But the running game, there is no Miles Sanders anymore. And I know it's going to be running back by committee. But if they can run the ball between 20 and 30 times collectively between the running backs that they have, I think that's where they'll have the most success.
Yeah, they had 25 rushes for 97 yards. So it wasn't – they weren't dominating the line of scrimmage. And as we were saying earlier, Hurts was their main guy running the football, and then Gainwell here and there. And then I really got to see Swift out there. And then the other interesting was Rashad Penny, their big pickup from Seattle. He didn't even dress for the game. So, you just have to wonder how they're going to work with their personnel. Boston Scott was out there. He got a couple touches. But I do agree with you that first and foremost, they got to establish the run. Then I can allow that play action to get the ball downfield to Green and Smith. And then Goddard, they have to get him going as well. So good win, in terms of the standings, but they have some work to do. And it's going to be fun to see them match up with the Dallas Cowboys coming up, and as well as the Giants. And this Minnesota game week 2 is going to be another one where they're going to need to have a total team effort to get it done. So I know the link will be rocking, and it's a home game, and everybody will be there. And it's a Thursday night, and it's on Prime, so the nation will be watching. And I expect them to have a better effort. Sirianni today, I was watching the press conference, and he was saying that he really thinks he has to rethink how he's doing these preseason games, because I noticed I attended the Cleveland game again in the preseason, and they really didn't play anybody. Most of the guys out there were cut going into the season, and they need to get these guys some reps.
Yep, I agree. And before I read Joey's comment here, I agree, Lloyd, because to me, and my fiance and I were talking about it as well, because last season he seemed to do the same thing. How do you not listen, I understand you tried to save your starters from injuries. There was a lot of them during the preseason, but I think a lot of these guys too do not get prepared in advance. It almost seems like a lot of these guys, and I understand veterans, I get it. You guys want your time. You got 6 months to do whatever you need to do. But a lot of these guys, a lot of these injuries were stuff because of conditioning. You just weren't conditioned as much as you should have been. But that being said, none of the starters, for the most part, for the Eagles, I will say, and other teams as well, but mostly for the Eagles, they just weren't in there. You can't do that. It's preseason. I understand you got to get the roster down. I get it. There's a lot of pressure on the head coach. There's a lot of pressure on the coaching staff themselves and the GM. But at the same time, too, you got to bring your guys in, get those reps in, because if everybody remembers last year the same way with Jalen Hurts, look at week 1. He didn't play too many games during preseason, and he came out really rocky game 1 of last year. And so this year, I'm not saying he came out, any worse than he did last year, but he started out, a little bit better. But after that 18th minute, that's when things seem to change. So good point about as far as guys needing to get those reps in before the regular season starts. But Joey B says, Eagles fans, it wasn't pretty, but it was a W. Just fine-tune some things, and you're going to be in a good spot. Can't say the same thing for the Giants as they got blanketed. And Joey says, to your point, Lloyd, about style points. A road win in the NFL, no matter how it looks, is a big accomplishment. Eagles will be just fine. And Rick follows it up with having Dean and Bradbury out makes me concerned. And the last comment here by Joey B says the most upset and mad fan in the Tampa area tonight is Devin Studio B. Bears losing at home to the Packers. Are you kidding me? No way that should have happened. So good point, Joey B. I didn't want to bring it up, but good point.
Yeah. And we'll jump on him in a second. But the Eagles were a 4-point favorite. They covered. The over-under was 45, and they hit that number right in the nose. So that's a push. And, but I thought overall they get the W. They know they have some things to clean up. Sirianni, Sean Desai, who's the new defensive coordinator. And they'll just get ready for Justin Jefferson, who everybody said they were supposed to pick. He's coming to Philadelphia on Thursday night, and we'll see if the Eagles secondary, who's probably not going to have Bradbury, is able to stop them. And Kirk Cousins, though, is usually not good in primetime games, so that is a good sign for the Philadelphia Eagles. Next, we'll jump. Yeah, next, why don't we transition? We'll talk about the Bucks, because I know we have some Bucks fans where you are, Angel, and the Bucks. That was a total surprise to me. They go to Minnesota as a road dog. And they pull out the win 20-17, and everyone who knows me knows I'm not the biggest Baker Mayfield guy, but he got it done. 21-34, 173 yards, 2 touchdowns, and most importantly, 0 interceptions. So it was a big win for Tampa. And what did you think about that, guys?
Kirk Cousins. I mean, I've been saying it the last 3 years. I don't know why they didn't get rid of him. I know he has that contract. I know he's just not the guy. He is a serviceable quarterback. He had 2 fumbles yesterday and an interception. You can throw for all the yards you want to. He did not take care of the football. Plain and simple. You take away those turnovers, Minnesota probably wins the football game. Again, Cousins 3 turnovers, Baker Mayfield no turnovers. Justin Jefferson did his thing. Addison seemed like he had a nice game. But it's a little bit of a surprise, because Mike Evans, Chris Godwin are going to do their thing. I don't know the type of game that Rachaad White had yesterday running back for Tampa Bay. It seems like he did okay as far as the running game. But, I picked Minnesota to win this division over Detroit. But, I've got to rethink it, because just when Kirk Cousins pulls you out, he sucks you back in.
Yeah.
And he's just not the guy. He is, to me, what he is, Lloyd, he's like a Brad Johnson type. Brad Johnson did numerous things well, but he's not going to get you over the hump. And that's just how I feel. And, Angel and I have talked about it, Minnesota had a great year last year, but it was a soft 13-4 or 12-5 or whatever they were, and they got bounced in the playoffs anyway. So it's just the more things change, the more they stay the same. So yeah, I'm surprised at Tampa Bay's W just because of the pieces that they lost. But when you bring Kirk Cousins into the equation, I'm not surprised on the other hand.
Well, I think a lot of Bucks fans, too, are surprised as well, because I don't think they really expected to win. And, it's funny because down here, Tampa Bay, great area. Don't get me wrong. It's beautiful in Tampa. Bucks fans. So you guys now lost Tom Brady. Obviously, you have Baker Mayfield. I think a lot of people want to see Kyle Trask start at the helm. Unfortunately, the Buccaneers didn't see enough into Kyle, and they wanted to give Baker Mayfield another shot. And for Baker, you got to think about it. It's tough. Cleveland, they let you go. You end up out there in North Carolina with the Carolina Panthers. Then you're shipped out to the Rams, and now you're with Tampa. And so he's got to have a major chip on his shoulder. But, he showed it yesterday, proving it, at least keep him within the W by 3 points. The first couple of drives for both teams wasn't that great, because you're talking about a punt, a fumble, another punt, before the field goal was made by Tampa Bay to lead at least 3-0. But Baker Mayfield, I think, for learning a new system, having to learn 3 new systems in 3 different years, or 2 different years for that matter, not bad. I think the bigger question, Lloyd, is going to be for Tampa Bay. Defensively, they didn't look too bad. They did pretty well during the offseason. We'll still have to get things together. Todd Bowles is trying to get his coordinators all on the same sheet of music. That's still not the case for the Bucks. But again, they held their own. But the bigger question is going to be, is Mike Evans going to be a Buck forever? From what it seems like from a lot of reports, Mike Evans stated that he will give it his all this season. He's already done with the talks. They've been going at it for a year. Nothing has happened. We've seen the Buccaneers move on from other players in the past. I think they'd be really silly and or behoove them to get rid of Mike Evans. They should that shouldn't even go into week 6. You should be talking about that right now and not even let it go to the end of the season. So Mike Evans, big impact player for the Buccaneers. I'd hate to see him go somewhere else. But let's just say, Lloyd, hypothetically, we get to the end of the season. There's no contract with Evans. Where could be a possibility, a landing spot that would end up being for Evans?
Yeah, that's all great question and everything. I was talking with somebody down there, and they know Todd Light, the general manager, pretty well, and it seems like Light and the Glazer family have decided that they're going to let Mike Evans play out his contract, and he's going to be allowed to go look somewhere else as a free agent. He's still very young. He's only 30 years old. He came in the league pretty young out of Texas A&M, and he's got a lot of good years left in him. I would see several teams taking a run at him. He is from Texas originally, so maybe as crazy as it sounds, Cowboys or maybe the Packers need another receiver, but a lot of teams would going to take a run at him and take a look. We saw DeAndre Hopkins had some opportunities to move someplace else this season. I still think he's a little better than him at this point in their career. So yesterday he had 6 catches for 66 yards and a touchdown, and he still showed that explosiveness. And you could see Baker is starting to really trust him in terms of throwing that high jump ball that he likes to go get. He's a bigger receiver, can take it deep, and he's had 10 straight seasons of 1,000 yards or more, and that's an NFL record. So he's a quality guy, and I'm quite frankly I'm surprised that the Glazer family, who are the owners of the Bucks, have not thought of bringing him back. So that'll be an interesting story throughout the season. They can sign extensions out until about November-ish, and then you go from there. In terms of the game, I do kind of agree with Ryan that it is all about Kirk Cousins, that he's in a contract year, and you wonder if he's ever going to be able to get it done. He's 35 now. He's been there for quite some time, and in Washington, he played out the franchise tag a couple times. They didn't want to give that long-term commitment to him. And he's had some great fantasy football numbers with Minnesota, but he just has not got done in terms of winning in the playoffs and driving this team. And now he lost Dalvin Cook, who's with the Jets, and I just don't see how much Madison. He's not Cook. He had 11 rushes yesterday for 34 yards, but he's just not that explosive player like Cook that can carry the mail inside and out. And then Tampa Bay, in terms of Dave Canales, their offense coordinator, they did a nice job getting the ball to Rashawn White 17 times. He only rushed for 39 yards, but I think they were just trying to keep the clock moving. And Mayfield, I've always killed him because he made killer mistakes. He did not make that big mistake and played with himself. And then you had the big defensive play by Anton Winfield Jr., that fumble, and that really turned that game around. So it was a good win for the Bucks, and we'll see how they do going into week 2.
All right, we had one comment as well here by Rick Marcus. Says, "Don't worry, Debbie. Bears with Justin Fields will expose the Buccaneers opening day here in Tampa." So I guess, we'll switch into the Green Bay game because, Lloyd, I think not. I will say myself, I've gone with the Bears, even though it's time for Jordan Love to finally get that start that he's needed. Aaron Rodgers said that he would never do what was done to him in the past. Obviously, he did it to Jordan Love. I think Jordan Love, for the most part, also appreciate it now that Aaron Rodgers is gone. Never say anything negative about him, kept his professionalism. But was that, I guess, either a surprise the way Green Bay handled the Bears, or are the Bears still on a fire sale? Because to me, I think with the head coach, I just think, to me, it's been now season 2, and I just think when they picked him up last season, it was just, to me, it was a safe hire. I don't see him as an aggressive head coach.
Yeah, Matt Eberflus is the head coach there, and they got him from Indy, and he's a defensive coordinator. I was pretty surprised they went with a defensive coach when they hired somebody. They had Matt Nagy in the past, who's now back with Kansas City, and you thought they'd bring somebody in there to kind of mentor Justin Fields, and it was a surprise pick. I do think, I've always thought Justin Fields was a quality quarterback going back to Georgia and then Ohio State, and I just think he's going to need some more pieces around him. Now, this year they did give him Darnell Mooney, who's still there, and then they brought in DJ Moore, who only had a couple catches yesterday. And then Claypool, I had some people saying that Claypool is just kind of quit. He's just going through the motions out there, which is crazy. They bring him over from the Steelers, and he just has not done much for them. Big quality win for Green Bay. And Jordan Love, you talked about the key guy, 15 to 27. He had 245 yards, 3 touchdown passes, 8 for 10 on third down conversions, and then they scored on 5 of their 10 drives. So they were moving the chains, and it was all Jordan Love. And Aaron Jones did a nice job in terms of he only ran 9 times for 41 yards and 1 touchdown, but that screen pass that he took to the house, I know he pulled his hamstring a little bit on that score, but that really just broke that game out, and a good win for Green Bay. And they've turned a page, and Aaron Rodgers said he wanted to be out of there, and now they have their quarterback.
Yeah, as far as Green Bay, I mean, Chicago made Jordan Love look like Jordan Rodgers, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, your best defense is to keep your offense on the field. And what happened with Chicago is Chicago's defense could not stop Green Bay at all. And when your offense can't put together consistent drives and they can't stay out there for a long period of time, it puts that much more pressure on your defense. Do I think Green Bay's that good? Hell no. Do I think Chicago's that bad? Maybe. But they made Green Bay look all world yesterday, and I'm like you, name me a receiver on the Chicago Bears that's going to scare any defense. There's nobody. Mooney won't scare anybody. DJ Moore won't scare anybody. Cole Kmet, the tight end's not going to scare anybody. And they let Montgomery walk to Detroit. Is Herbert, a good running back? Remains to be seen. So, again, I'm in agreement with you. They're going to have to – they don't have the right pieces around Justin Fields right now. And they are going to struggle again this year. And when your offense struggles, it puts that much more pressure on the defense. And you see what happened yesterday. The defense is just not that talented enough for the task.
Yeah, and a big key is that offensive line. Their offensive line is struggling. I know they've tried to fix it last couple drafts, and they still have some work to do. So, the Bears, I think they could be a spoiler near the end of the season, but they had one of the worst records in the league last year for a reason. They had the number 1 overall pick. Of course, they traded it. But, I think eventually, maybe some changes are coming there, and they do have a new general manager, Ryan Poles, and he's talking big, and he'll probably want to put his stamp on that team eventually. Green Bay will go to Atlanta this week, so that's going to be a big test for them to battle 2 young quarterbacks. And then we'll see in terms of the Bears. The Bears are at Tampa. That's a desperation bowl. The team that loses that game, they're probably going to have a very long season.
No, that's true. And we got 2 more comments here. One by Joey B.
Sure.
First one, he says, Lloyd, what grade would you give Bryce Young, even in a loss in his first NFL start? He looked good. Can you see him potentially as a B- and/or a C+?
Yeah, the interesting thing is all 3 rookie quarterbacks kind of had their moments, but unfortunately they all lost, and we've seen that with a lot of first rounders. What I did like with Bryce Young is he could have got down on himself. He had a couple interceptions that he threw to Jesse Bates in that game, and he kind of shook that off and was still able to drive them down for a nice touchdown. And you could see glimpses of what we saw in terms of when he was at Alabama. 20 of 38, 146 yards. He did have 2 interceptions that I talked about the base, but he is growing. I would probably put him, if you had to grade him, probably in that high C range, and we'll see from there. Now, conversely, on the other side, you had Desmond Ridder, who was also making one of his first starts, 15 of 18, for 83%. They only threw for 115 yards and 1 touchdown, but no interception. So he was a consummate game manager. He was utilizing a lot. Bijan Robinson, who I think is going to be the rookie of the year. He had 6 catches for 27 and 1 touchdown. And then Algier, I know a lot of people are upset because he was bolstering Robinson at the goal line, but Algier had a very nice game, 15 rushes, 75 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So Atlanta, going to be an interesting team. I know yesterday when I was on with the Angel, I was saying that the Saints are probably going to win the NFC South, but Atlanta, Arthur Smith he's a quality coach, and he's bringing some good values there. And Fontenot's coming over from the Saints in terms of general manager. They have a good group there, so that's going to be interesting, that fight in the NFC South.
All right, I think so as one. I think you're right as far as when it comes to the Saints. And then Joey B's got a follow-up question. And obviously with Colorado doing as well as they have, and talking about the college football side of the house. But as he states, and by the way, if you guys are just tuning in here at the bottom of the hour, 9 minutes past the bottom of the hour, we are live here tonight. It is the debut show of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football right here on Sports Radio 102.9 The Game. You guys can hear us every Monday evening at 7 p.m., unless Ryan decides to jump on Noah's Ark and we won't see him again. Other than that, we'll be able to at least hear and listen to us. And by the way, if you guys are watching the screen, no, Lloyd is not a robot. His screen may be frozen, but you guys can hear him just fine. So, Lloyd, I wanted to tell you that in between. But your screen's frozen, but we can hear you. So that's a great thing.
Okay, good.
But he follows up with, Lloyd, if primetime accomplishes great things in college football, do you see him as a head coach in the NFL in the next 10 years?
That's a great question. A lot of former players, they find it difficult to make that transition to being a coach, let alone being a head coach in the National Football League. It is a lot of hard work. It's a lot of tape study. These guys live in the facilities wherever they are. I could see him given an opportunity. It's going to take that coach that can stand his flamboyance. And there's a couple people I could think, Jerry Jones, as crazy it sounds, maybe Jerry Jones given an opportunity. They're pretty close. How about Arthur Blank down in with the Falcons? He's always looking to make a splash, But what Dion is doing, it's incredible. He turned over probably 75% of that roster. I did get a chance to spend some time with his son Shador at the Black College Football Hall of Fame Awards dinner. He was our Player of the Year when he was at Jackson State. And he's a young man that has a lot of skill, and he has his father's flamboyance. He's not a big runner, surprisingly, like his father, but he can throw the football, and he's pushing records that have not been pushed in a very long times in terms of his first 2 games. So that was a very good one against Nebraska. We'll see if they can keep it going against Colorado State, and then I think they have the big one against Oregon.
Yeah.
Let's pump the brakes on the whole Deion Sanders Colorado thing. They played a TCU team that's not the team they were last year, and they played a Nebraska team that, let's be honest, Matt Rule is going to find it difficult to win in Nebraska with that material. They still have to play Oregon. They still have to play Oregon State. They still have to play USC, and they still have to play Washington. Those are the 4 games where we'll see where Colorado's at. If they get waxed, then I want to see how many people jump off that bandwagon.
As Joey B says, haha, I just triggered Neff. Yes. and in all capital letters with the exclamation point. But yeah, no, listen, I understand obviously what Joey B is saying. He's not just because the last 2 games, obviously, you end up being wins, but you look at, prime time, and it's funny to me how everybody continues to call him Coach Prime, where it's not, Coach Sanders, Coach Deion is Coach Prime, which is great for Deion Sanders. The only thing that was kind of bothersome this weekend, and I know he's got the issues with his foot, but he was on the college show on Saturday, and it had taken him a while to get up to the stage. To me, I felt like instead of having him walk up to the stage, he should already been up there. But Neon Deion being the way he is, I'm pretty sure he wanted to make that walking statement up there. But nonetheless, we'll see what ends up happening with him. But getting back around the NFL, and you got Joey Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, along with the Cleveland Browns and Clyde. Sometimes you want to call the Cleveland Browns just a bunch of clowns. I'll call them Clyde to be nice. But Lloyd, Joey Burrow being held down by the Cleveland Browns for 82 yards. Did anyone see that one coming?
And he got benched.
Yeah.
His wallet was weighing him down. He gets that $219 million guaranteed, and it just was. This was a surprise angel of the weekend to me. And I know we still got one game to be played, and Detroit had that quality win on Thursday, but Cincinnati went in there as a 2-point favorite, and yes, it was raining and it was tough conditions, but Joe Burrow just looked tentative and looked awful. I each week I give out my Lloyd's lackey, and he's definitely somebody that I thought was under consideration. 14 of 31, 82 yards passing, no touchdowns, obviously no interceptions, and he gets outplayed by Deshaun Watson, who he's as rusty as they can be. Deshaun Watson, yes, he got the W, and he had little glimpses here and there, but that was a very bad loss for Cincinnati, and this is a team a lot of people had Super Bowl expectations for, right. And I think that calf injury where he missed a majority of camp had a lot to do with his performance. He just did not seem ready. Chase only had 5 catches for 39 yards. He was not getting the ball to most of his playmakers, and I know the conditions weren't the best, but that's a rivalry game, and you expected more.
Well, they believed the hype going into the Cleveland game. It happens all too often, Lloyd. You know this. Guy gets the big contract, and then he comes out and he sucks out loud. And look, Cincinnati, based off what they did last year, and I'll be the first one to admit this. Had the Buffalo-Cincinnati game not happened the way it did, and Cincinnati wins that game, Cincinnati gets home field advantage throughout the playoffs, and I don't think Kansas City makes the Super Bowl. So I just think they're starting to believe their hype. Joe Cool and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and people were building the defense up this year. But to come out and lay a stinker like that against one of your rivals is unacceptable at this level, at this stage of where the Cincinnati Bengals should be. And yes, calf injuries are a bitch to get rid of. They linger. And yes, it's affected him. You could see it, and I don't know what they're going to do to correct it, but they better get ready for week 2, and they better figure it out soon, because if they put that kind of performance together in week 2, then you're really going to start hearing the grumblings.
Yeah, Zach Taylor's got his work cut out for him, and everybody's saying he's another one of these bright young minds around the National Football League, disciple of McVay, and it's time for him to step up and do some good coaching here, because you're right, they host Baltimore, then they have the Rams, who are another shocker. They look pretty good, and they're at Tennessee, and then they have at Arizona, Seattle, and then they have their bye. So, the schedule's not the easiest for Cincinnati, and you're right. They have to do the preparation needed to get in the mix, because right now that was just a terrible performance. And everybody had it wrong, because they were a heavy road favorite in that one.
Lloyd Joy B has a follow-up as we were talking about Coach Prime here earlier. He says, Lloyd, Shedeur Sanders, does he remind you of a new age Steve McNair at all? I think he could run, just chooses not to. But when he does, he has that same size as McNair did back in the day.
Yeah, Steve McNair was a consummate guy who he was a tough physical quarterback, and he made a lot of tough runs, and they built that offense around him and Eddie George. And I think Shedeur, we'll see if he can become the passer that Steve McNair was. Obviously, Steve had to develop into being a passer, come from Alcorn State, a lower division of competition, and then he sat for a couple of years behind Chris Chandler. But definitely, we'll see what Shedeur can do, and as the season rolls along, he's playing better teams than he did when he was at Jackson State. So we'll see. I particularly am pointing to that Oregon game to see how he's going to move forward.
Now, yesterday you had the Bolts and the Miami Dolphins. It seemed like they could have probably gone on forever, because both of them did not want to lose. And it was just amazing to see it towards the last 3 or 2 minutes of the game, with the fall between Tua And obviously Justin Herbert. But that one probably between that, I think San Francisco is surprising a lot of Steelers fans on that blowout the way that one happened. But and then we got the Giants and Dallas as well. But Miami and with the San Diego Chargers, Miami obviously had stepped up both offensively, defensively this year. We saw them pick up the wide receivers last season. It seems like they picked up right where they left off last year. Barring, I should say, another concussion to Tua, Lloyd, can Miami make it to the playoffs and maybe potentially, even if they come in as a wild card, could they potentially get at least past the first round?
They could, and this is a dangerous team. They showed it yesterday. And when I talk about Miami and that Chargers game, take the over. These guys, they scored 70 points, and the over-under was 51. And the Dolphins going there as a serious underdog, and they just showed that they had no fear. McDaniel is – everybody talks about him as this mad scientist, but he's a pretty smart guy in terms of, I better just throw the ball to Tariq Hill and see what happens. So Tariq had 11 receptions on 15 targets for 215 yards and 2 touchdowns, including that big 35-yard bomb in that game. So he was just dominant, and they have, it's scary when you have Hill and you have Waddle out there, and Mostert was efficient running the football here and there when they needed to, and Tua looked very good. So in terms of his concussions, everybody I talked to said his family talked to a variety of people, and he got that clean bill of health, and he's feeling good. He's put on about 15 pounds of muscle. He's doing MMA stuff, and we'll see how it turns out. You hope for the best for this young guy because he did very well at Alabama, and then he kind of got pushed to the background. That was a serious injury last year. That was pretty scary what happened in Cincinnati. So Miami could be a contender, but this is going to be a very fun division to watch with the Jets and the Bills.
I mean, this will all be predicated on if they can keep Tua upright. They don't wear those bubble things on their helmets in the regular season. So, but I mean, if they can be efficient running the football, they can keep Tua upright. He doesn't take the big hit. And Lord, if their defense can just improve a little bit. Oh my God! Yesterday, if you want a defense, yesterday's Miami Chargers game was not the game to watch. So, how good are either one of these defenses? We still don't know. But man, Hill, Waddle, you got Mostert, you got the stable of running backs that they have, and if they can just be a middle of the pack defense, 15th or above, who knows? I mean, I have Miami making the playoffs. I don't have them winning the division, but God, they are speedy, they are dangerous, and you guard Hill, then you leave Waddle open. You double team Hill or double team Waddle, then you leave Hill open. So they're just going to be a fun team to watch, and I would take that game out of the equation anyway, because again, we don't know how good those defenses are going to be along down the line. First game of the year, nerves. Everybody playing together, probably like gelling, trying to gel for the first time. So, but I think both these teams are going to be fun to watch. And I've got to pose a question to Lloyd. Lloyd, Mike Williams, big frame, big body, has speed, but he just disappears most weeks. And I don't know why they didn't trade him in the offseason. I want to get your thoughts on Mike Williams.
Yeah, the Chargers are interesting because, they just have pieces and they can't close games. Herbert, they're saying he's one of the best young quarterbacks out there. A lot of people are saying that Miami should have taken him instead of Tua. But, just sometimes it's like they got to learn to finish games and how does everything fit together. And then Williams, he does have the physicality and the size that you like, but he always seems to get dinged up, And with him and Keenan Allen and Eckler, they have a lot of weapons as well. And their offensive line, led by Rashawn Slater, is one of the best in the league. So, you would hope for more out of them. And I thought they had some overconfidence going into this game against Miami, and they underestimated them. And then Miami took the hit in the mouth, and they just came right back at them. So it was a back and forth game. The Dolphins brought in Vic Fangio in terms of fixing that defense. I think he'll do a better job there. And you have Van Ginkel and you have Xavier Howard and the rest of those guys. And I like Phillips, that young pass rusher that they have on the Dolphins. So the Dolphins are going to be an interesting team. I still picked the Chargers to make the playoffs, though.
Yeah, Rick Marcus, who's made a comment there for Ryan Neff, says, I see Chris Johnson signed with KC today. Are you feeling better, Ryan, now that Chris Johnson's there in KC?
Well, first of all, Rick, it's Chris Jones and not Chris Johnson.
Listen, don't correct the man. He wanted Johnson. He made a point with Johnson. He'll be just fine.
Do I feel better defensively? Yes. They've got to get Kelsey on the field. You saw what kind of effect it had on the offense in the Thursday night game against Detroit. Chris Jones demands double teams and frees everybody else up on the defense. I thought the defense played well last Thursday without Chris Jones. But how quickly can they get Kelsey on the field? Because without Kelsey, do they have a stable of decent receivers? Yes. Do they have a standout number 1 or number 2 regarding like opposite Kelsey? No, they don't. Sky Moore, they have Rashid Rice, and some of the other guys. I just don't. They've got Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I don't know if Lloyd's in agreement, but I thought they sort of shot themselves in the foot when they didn't go out and go get a number 1 receiver to complement Kelsey, because I know what they're thinking. We won with this group of guys last year, and we did all right. We won a Super Bowl. Let's see if we can do this again without, spending a lot of money. Lloyd, I don't know what you feel.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was surprised they didn't get a more frontline guy. I know Juju Smith-Schuster is not the biggest name out there, but he did a lot for them. And then he went to New England, and they just kind of didn't add somebody, particularly after Tariq left a couple of years ago. And then they were counting on Kadarius Toney, obviously at one of the worst games we've seen in quite some time, with 3 drops, one that led to that pick 6 by Branch. And I think they will clean some things up, and they think that Patrick Mahomes is the great deodorant and he'll cure all, but he can't make chicken salad out of what. So not having Travis Kelce, that does hurt him a lot, and he needs him out there because he is a security blanket. But at 33, he is getting up there in age, and you do have to start thinking, okay, are there other pieces in place? And you were hoping that one of those other guys would step up, and maybe it'll be Rice or one of those young guys going forward. But it was a very disappointing situation. And then in terms of Chris Jones signing, I thought that was much needed. The Lions, they had 34 rushes for 118 yards, and they controlled the clock. They had almost 33 minutes of possession to 27 for KC. So they controlled the clock and got pressure on Mahomes in key situations. And I just felt like Jones, he's their pocket crusher, because the rest of that defense, there's just not many other name brand guys on that defense, and they need him out there. So that's a big signing for them. And I know they'll be happy to get him back out there.
Well, Lloyd, we got about 4 minutes left here. I think the big takeaway, obviously, we know that San Fran, big winners over Pittsburgh. I think surprised, not surprised, Brock Purdy keep doing, Brock Purdy things. But the one thing I want to take away here before we end the show, Jacksonville, Indy.
Sure.
Indy. Is Indy seriously in trouble? I mean, not even any jokes aside, it seems like that organization is just really collapsing. And it seemed between once Nick Sirianni was gone, not the smartest hire, in my opinion, in Indianapolis, but is this team in shambles at this point?
Well, Shane Steichen gets there, and I thought he did a good enough job with the Eagles in terms of their offense to get a head coaching job. I was actually surprised Gannon got the job with Cardinals. That's another story. But when I look at the Colts, it's just like, okay, Jim Irsay is just kind of that wild card owner. But I did watch a lot of that game, and I thought Anthony Richardson did some nice things in this game. He was 24-37, 223 yards passing. He did have 1 touchdown, 1 interception, but he was running the ball 10 times, 40 yards, and then 1 touchdown. So they were doing some things with him. They would be smart over these next couple of weeks to get Jonathan Taylor into the fold. He's out. He's on PUP, and they need to kind of repair that bridge and get him back on his team, because Richardson needs him. But I think that Indianapolis will probably finish the bottom part of AFC South.
Hey,
All right.
Angel, just real quick, two things for Lloyd. One, do you think with the injury to the Baltimore running back, I'm drawing a blank, J.K.
J.K.
Dobbins,
Dobbins.
do you think Baltimore may make a play for Taylor with the Colts? And then two, you have to get his pick for tonight.
Yeah, when I saw that injury, I saw him limp off, and I said, well, something's not right with his leg there. It would be smart of them to try to go after Taylor or bring somebody else into the fold. Kareem Hunt's out there too, but they're going to need another running back. It's going to be interesting to see there, and that was a bad loss for them. They did win the game 25-9, but Lamar's got to play better. In terms of tonight, interesting game. The Bills are a 2.5-point favorite, and everybody's talking about the Jets. The Kings are hard knocks. My pick was the New York Jets. I think they've turned a page, and they're going to be in an AFC Championship game, and Aaron Rodgers is definitely going to be the story of this season. So I look for the Jets to win this one tonight, and I know the Bills fans out there are saying no way, but I think it's going to be a Jets night.
Brian, your
Bills
pick?
27, Jets 23.
I'm taking the Bills on this one. I don't think that Aaron Rodgers gets the job done. That's just me personally, but who knows? He could end up having a breakout game. So I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening. I'm quite sure it'll be interesting talk for our second episode coming up next week. So once again, thank you to Lloyd Vance. And tonight, if you guys had tuned in here at the end of the show, hopefully not, but if you get the chance, you'll be able to hear it on the replay on Sports Radio 102.9 from the game, as it's been Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on Sports Radio right here on Sports Radio 102.9 the game. So you'll be able to hear the replay there. Of course, you can watch the replay on broadcastsouth.com. You can see the replay as that way as well. So we'll be here every Monday night at 7 o'clock, barring any kind of injuries. Maybe once again, Ryan, and we know that he likes to tear his ACL for once in a while. So unless he tears his ACL, he'll be back here come next week. For my producer over in Studio B, for Lloyd Vance. And again, Lloyd was live. Don't you guys think that it was an AI? It was actually Lloyd, even though his screen was frozen. But Lloyd was live with us tonight. With that being said, don't forget that Thursday night, this Thursday, we will have Misha Johnson on at 8 p.m. this Thursday, September 14th. So tune into that one, as she is coming off the 90-day fiancé. The tell-all has not happened yet, so it'll be interesting what I can get out of her without her telling me everything literally. So with that all being said, I hope everyone enjoys the night. Enjoy Monday Night Football, and we will see you all back here come next week. So enjoy it all, and we will see you later.
LV in the house.
Oh, geez.
Go.
Yeah.